Hello and welcome everyone. Today we are going to be doing our May native plant garden tour. I'm very excited. There is a ton growing in the garden, lots coming into bloom. It's a very exciting time of year for me. So let's get to the videos now, and thank you so much for watching. Here is our little paper birch tree. It's only about 3 feet tall, but it's got lots of leaves. It's clearly very happy. I planted it last fall just as a wee baby tree, and I think it's going to do quite fine here in our little garden in the back. Over here near the back of this kind of part shade, part sun garden, we've got our swamp milkweed, and it looks like something is nibbling it, but hopefully it can hold strong. Oh, look, this guy's got his head chopped off too. Oh, the bunnies are out here. I know it. Anyhow, this is the second year that I have this plant. Last year it did not bloom, so I'm hoping that maybe it's established enough that we might get some blooms this year, but we will see. Over here we have our pale purple coneflower, and so this guy is kind of sitting near the middle to back of this skinny garden here beside our lupins, and it'll get about maybe part shade to sun in this garden. Over here we have our Scarlet Beebalm. We've got lots of little stems all starting to sprout up. They smell really nice when you rub the leaves. It's really quite a beautiful smell. And so these guys are going to get to about maybe 4 to even maybe 4 feet tall or so. And they've got those big, bright, beautiful kind of fireworks of blooms that I just love. And this started with just a tiny little bit, maybe about this much here. And it's really spread out now nicely with the runners that it sends out. So I just would love to have a big, nice little area here with full of Scarlet Beebalm. So we're just letting it do its thing. Over beside the Scarlet Beebalm, we've got our obedient plant, and this is a nice tall plant, grows to about 4 feet, maybe even 5 feet high at the top of the little bloom stalks, and it's just one of my favorite native plants. It has tons of blooms on the stalks that all come to the tip, and it's just a magnet for pollinators. I just love it. And this is more of a plant that likes wet feet. So I do have to pay a little bit more attention because in this part of the garden, it's really not too wet. So we give it a little bit more of a drink than the rest of the garden, but I do love it. So I'm going to do my best to keep it happy. Over here, kind of intermixed with these, this was those snowdrops that just volunteered themselves into our garden. This is the second year, the young Columbine plant that I have. And look, we've got a little bloom coming. So that's pretty exciting. Last year it was just a wee little thing, and it grew to probably about this height, and that's as far as it went, and there were no blooms. So this is clearly showing that it's a happy enough plant to make blooms. And I'm pretty excited because this spreads really nicely and it'll look really great back here in the garden. Kind of, I'm thinking these will all die back. I'm not entirely sure with the snowdrops, but we'll figure that part out. And if not, then we'll just have to move them because I definitely want this to be more for my Columbine than the snowdrops that just happen to appear in the garden. So this is our Rudbeckia hirta, and this is kind of being overwhelmed by our allium plant. So if you leave allium and let them go to seed, they're going to make 1 million babies. And now I have this forest that I need to maintain and kind of disperse to other friends because I've got way too many here that I'm looking for. But anyway, back here is where we've got the Rudbeckia hirta, and it's got those kind of fuzzy leaves. And so I'm hoping that those will take over in the back of this garden as I replace or as I move the allium so that they don't just take over. So if you don't want your allium, native or non-native, to kind of go bonkers, then you want to deadhead them before they do something like this. So it's a kind of an embarrassing state right now, but we're going to do some maintenance real soon. So this is a sad part of my video. This here is the Serviceberry that I planted last year. It had these nice big stalks. It was so happy, and then it got real dry and it was really angry, and I was afraid of this, but it looks like that none of this, there's no foliage on the top part of the plant. There were no lovely little blooms like I saw on other serviceberries, but we do have some signs of life. So I am going to just leave this. If you are a serviceberry expert and you think that it might be helpful to kind of cut these off, that's what I was thinking of doing, is cutting off these stems here and just letting it kind of reestablish itself and start
from fresh, but I have not had a lot of luck with Serviceberry. I had another plant that I haven't showed you guys yet just because it's so pathetic. It got eaten by bunnies and it's barely hanging on too. So I got 2 new Serviceberries from my Ontario native plant order, and if I can't make any of these things survive, then perhaps I just don't have the right place for this plant. But we're still trying because I do love this plant, and I'm hoping that over time I will have big beautiful Serviceberry bushes all over my property. But for now, it's this. Similar to my Serviceberry story, this is my pussy willow bush. And if you've seen my video from the past, we propagated this from a cutting, which was a really fun experiment. But it did get just gobbled up by the bunnies. And so, yeah, it didn't do as well as I was hoping. But again, similar, it has lots of signs of life. So we'll just, maybe it's doing good underground and establishing its root structure. And hopefully over time, we'll have a nice pussy willow bush as well. Just to show you the beautiful little lily of the valley that I have here. They're so pretty. They smell so nice, but they are invasive and they're a pain in the butt. And they have come in from the kind of area back here, which you can see is terribly infested with garlic mustard. So I'm going to be cutting all that back and doing my best to get rid of the lily of the valley too. But my goodness, it just wants to keep creeping into my garden. So what a job I have. All sorts of fun that I got to get on soon, because as you can see back there, we've got the seeds starting to develop. So we got to get rid of those fast. So this is just another shot of all of the terrible invasives that are just making themselves at home in this little creek area that's just behind my house. And I've been doing my best to try to manage these, but clearly I am not winning this battle, but I am determined to keep fighting it and to see what I can do over time. But we'll be out here picking garlic mustard very, very soon. So here in our shady garden that's in our front of our house, we've got our Foamflower, which I just love. It's got these beautiful little starbursts of flowers that are just so gorgeous. It is a plant that's awesome for shade or part shade gardens, but it does like more wet feet than my garden tends to be. So I just have to pay attention to it. And over here, we've got this sweet woodruff that is not native and has grown so fast. Like, this is bonkers. So I'm a little nervous about this plant. I think it might be more like, has like invasive tendencies in Ontario. So I'm going to do some pulling of this and definitely not let it overtake my Foamflower, because that's what I want to be growing here. This was kind of just filler. So we're going to give this guy some space so he can maybe spread out a bit more in the garden as well. Over here in our shady front garden, we've got our Marginal Fern. This was a plant that I transplanted from our cottage last year, and it's doing pretty well. It's pretty happy. Just got to make sure that he gets enough water and moisture, because it does get a little dry here. So we'll have to keep an eye on him as well. So one of my favorite native plants in our shade garden is this Solomon seal. It's massive. It's so big. It's like 3.5 feet tall. It starts off on these little stalks, and then all of a sudden it's this big, beautiful plant. It's got all these really neat kind of hanging flowers here that they're not quite in bloom yet, as you can see, but they will pop, and I'll show you that in the next video. They're so happy here, and they're super drought tolerant for such a big plant. I was really surprised on how happy this thing was last year, despite the super dry season that we had. Then over here, beside our Solomon seal, we've got our Canada anemone. Now this looks kind of small right now, but it is going to get bigger, and it's probably going to be about 2 feet tall, which is why I moved it to more of this back of the garden. So hopefully it's happy enough after its transplant this year to show us some blooms, but so far I don't see any yet. Here's our little Trillium plant. I don't have a ton, but I do have signs of life, so I'm really happy about this. There's no blooms this year, but sometimes it can take a while for the Trillium to bloom. I got it new last year from Native Plant Source, so perhaps I have to wait a bit. I've heard that it can take 7 years for Trillium to bloom, so fingers crossed we don't have to wait quite that long. So here is our New England Aster. It's over here by our water barrel in our sunny part of the garden on the side of the house. And it is probably about 2 feet or so high right now, but it's going to get quite large, like 4 or 5 feet tall. But what I'm going to do is nip off the tips of these guys. It's called the Chelsea chop. And essentially what it does is you can clip off the tip of each of the stalks, and it will help the plant branch out and have more of a bushy plant as opposed to tall and skinny. Now I did find that the bottom of this plant was kind of naked last year. Some of the leaves fell off, so I'm going to grow a little bit more of some maybe annuals or something to fill in this space so it doesn't look empty in front of the plant. But either way, it's a happy plant, and I'm looking forward to lots of beautiful purple flowers later in the season. So over here, these little stalks that are starting to peek out is our butterfly weed. Now this butterfly weed was in a perfect spot. It was in this kind of drier area at the side of my house. We get a lot of sun over here, but now I've got this purple sand cherry that's kind of gone crazy and it's grown really, really fast, and it's shading out the butterfly weed. So this guy's not as happy as he used to be, but these guys don't love to be moved. So I'm gonna leave him here and hope for the best and try to cut back some of these branches so that it can get more sun. But I'm definitely going to be planting more butterfly weed in other areas. So I'll just walk out a bit here so you can see that there's quite a big bush here that's going to shade this little guy out. So I just need more butterfly weed. I think that's the solution here. We'll let this guy be and try to give him as much sun as he wants, but then also just have to plant more in other parts of the garden as well. So over here, we've got our little blue stem grass, which I have to say I was so pleased about last year. It was the first year that I've had this, and it was so beautiful, especially later on in the year. In the fall, it was like this rosy pink kind of color that just was gorgeous. So really excited to have this back this year. We've got one over here, and then back, where is it? Over here, there's another one too. So happy to have them coming back and looking forward to seeing how big they get this year as well. Hiding amongst the leaves, we've got a bunch of Lanceleaf Coreopsis. So there's one back there, and there's one right in front of me here. And over here beside this sedum, we've got another. So it's kind of like just going to be like this whole little halo of Lanceleaf Coreopsis in this part of the garden with those beautiful kind of sunshine, yellow daisy-like flowers. So looking forward to seeing lots of those this year as well. Check it out! We've got blooms on our golden Alexanders. Aren't they so cute? So this is a host plant to the swallowtail butterfly. So very excited to have this blooming this year. It's just so cute. This was a transplant last year from a friend, and this year we've got some flowers coming. So that's great. We didn't have any flowers last year. Things were just getting settled, and now it looks like we're going to have some lovely, beautiful yellow flowers kind of in the back part of this part shade garden. So over here in our boulevard garden, we've got our prickly pear cactus, and this is the coolest plant. This is native to Ontario, although it's probably truly native to a little bit more south of us, but I'm still going to grow it. I'm pretty excited about this plant. It's pretty fun. It is coming back. It's not looking as wrinkly as last month, and it does look like it's going to start growing more little. Right here is where last year I thought that was going to be a flower, but then I realized it was actually some of these pads. So maybe we'll get some new pads this year as well. Oh, here's another one too. How cool is that? Right there. So maybe that'll be a flower. Maybe that'll be another pad. That one looks a little different. Cool, huh? It's kind of covered. All these are the little flowers that are coming off of the Norway maple tree that's kind of standing tall above the boulevard gardens over here, but that's okay. Those will not hurt it. I am thinking that this year might be the year to move this guy because he's only in a tiny little crevice in this rock, so I probably will find a new home for him. But either way, pretty psyched to have prickly pear cactus in my gardens. So also in our boulevard garden, we've got our wild blue lupin, and I just love this plant. I'm so happy to see it so happy and healthy over here. And guess what? We've got all sorts of baby ones. This plant dropped all its seeds last year before I could catch them, and I'm totally fine with that because look, I got one there. I got another one over here. This is some more of the Rudbeckia hirta. This is in my front garden. Oh, I'm just so pleased. You can see, I don't know if you can see right now, but there's a couple there as well, and they're all kind of in behind as well. So pretty psyched. I just love this plant, and I'm super happy to have a ton of it. So let it do its thing, but this year I'm going to try my best to catch some of those seeds so I can share them with others as well. Also in my boulevard garden, we've got some violets. So these are new. They're just volunteers. They just made themselves a happy home over here and we let them do their thing. And look at them. Aren't they so pretty? I'm pretty sure these are the native kind. So if you think they are or they're not and you know for sure, please let me know because I do want to know for sure. It's nice to know if they're native or not so I can encourage them and maybe share them with others as well. They're such pretty little things. I'm not sure why anybody would ever think these are a weed. We've got some here. And then we've got some hiding in the irises as well and kind of all over the yard, but I love them. So the more the merrier. Also in our boulevard garden, along with our blue lupins and our little violets over there, we've got our Prairie Smoke. And this year we have some blooms and we got a whole bunch of them. Are these not the coolest things? They're so pretty. And then when they're done blooming, they have these really cool kind of smoky, wispy looking seed heads that develop. So I'm excited to show you those as well. Just gorgeous. So happy to have this in the garden. Now this plant is apparently just like heavy hitter when it comes to being drought tolerant and fine in sunny spots as well. So happy to have this in the front yard in our boulevard garden because it does get quite dry. And so hopefully we can get some seeds and get even more of this for the future as well. So over here in another one of our shady gardens, which is pretty much most of our gardens, we've got our wild Columbine. Now this is the more established plant. The one in the back is more of the young plant that's about 2 years old. This one's probably 3 or 4 years old now. And look we've got tons of blooms coming. These blooms are just so gorgeous. They are kind of like a coral pink that turns into a yellow color. It's just awesome. So hopefully I'll be able to share those with you guys really, really soon. And this plant's pretty happy. You can see down here, we've got a whole bunch of new growth happening, but I don't see any babies. I was hoping to see a whole bunch of new little ones growing here, but fingers crossed, I'll just be patient and maybe they'll be coming. I sprinkled a bunch of seeds last year, but nothing quite yet. So today's going to be planting day, but to show you where we're at before I put these guys in the ground, this is our wild blueberry, the low bush blueberry that we got from Ontario Native Plants. We've got a whole bunch of black raspberries here that we're excited to plant. I've got a Serviceberry that hopefully will be happy in its new home. So over here, ready to go outside and get planted today. We've got a couple more. These three actually are from the Ontario Native Plants. We've got a bush honeysuckle here, a Serviceberry in the middle, and then over here is our redbud with these pretty little heart-shaped leaves. I just love them. Really hoping that these guys will be happy in their new home here. So over here, we've got these 2 wild phlox and sneezeweed that I got from the Rare Sites plant sale. So very, very excited to plant all these guys. And then of course we've got all of our seedlings, which I do have to say I have not figured out what they all are yet. So if you know what they are, you can let me know. But either way, I've got all these videos from the past that I'm going to be looking at to see what exactly these little guys are before planting them. And of course, sharing them with others because I've got a ton of plants that I'm working with here. So we will soon see what these are. I promise next video, I will be sharing that with you then.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found the video interesting and helpful. If you have any tips on growing these native plants in a suburban context on what works well or different design tips as well, we'd love to hear from you. Please share in the comment section below so we can all learn from each other. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. We're going to be doing videos just like this over the whole growing season, just to show you how these plants change over time so you can plan your garden design as well. Thank you so much for watching and happy gardening.